We just got this Carter pump in. It's a fits a 1960 to 66 AMC 8-cylinder with vacuum wipers. It's what is considered a dual action pump, made by Carter. The number stamped on the flange, 3158. We're going to go through it, freshen it up, make it like new again. Before we even get started, we're going to take a peek at, see the fitting, whether it got hit in shipment when it was getting shipped here, or customer might have got aggressive with it and trying to get the vacuum line out. But in any event, it's going to come out of there. Remove the 4 screws. Be careful, there's a real heavy spring underneath here. As you can see, it's already starting to push the casting up. Make sure you have a good hold on it. I'll show you the spring. It's almost like a valve spring. These are valves for the vacuum side, inlet and outlet valve. To remove these, go down here with a punch and just drive them out. This is Carter's version of the vacuum diaphragm. This gasket. Now to get this out, push down on the arm. It'll go up to a certain point. And grab the nut with a pair of pliers and lift it out. This is where it seals, right around this edge. There's like an O-ring that goes in there. We'll get to that. Down inside here is the valves. Now you got to just get rid of some of that grease. Now to get these valves out, take a decent sized screwdriver, put it right down beside it, and just pry it out. Now these valves, they'll come in 2 pieces. It's like a mushroom top. There's a spring in between all that mess, and then the valve plate. There's also the rest of the valve that's just down inside, and you have to get this part out too. This is what it looks like. If you just turn it to one side, give it a good push, it'll get it right out. There's also a spring down there. I'll be right back. Okay, we got a second valve here. This one here, same deal. Just pick one of the holes and drive your screwdriver right straight through it. Pop it to one side, and it'll come out. This is what it looks like if it's all together. And there's no screen underneath it. See all the grease down in there. God only knows where it came from. Flip it over. We're ready to attack the fuel side. First thing you want to do is mark the location of the casting. Now this is 2 pieces. This comes apart from here. But what I do is I mark it once on the front, on the casting itself, and then up above on this piece. Now you can take a picture of it, do whatever you want. just as long as it goes right back on the same way it came off. We got to get the, this is the filter. And there's a little spring at the top. Look, this thing's been around the world a few times. And the gasket. And these screws. They look like they're going to be hard to get out. So we're going to give them a try first. And before I get the last one out, I don't know if you can see this or not, I'll show you. It's another fitting that the customer left in there. It's no big deal. But these are the ones that I'll take out. Usually if it's a straight fitting, if this had threads on it and threaded in, I'd leave this one in. But these here, you can get crap piled up behind it or stuck inside there. And if you don't see it, I'll just take it out, send it back to the customer, they'll put it in and the pump won't work. So, last screw. And you notice it's all the screws are out and it's still stuck. We get a putty knife, put it in between the casting and where the two pieces meet. Just give it a couple of taps, or 4, and that'll separate it. There's your valves. You got to remove these 2 screws to separate the 2 halves. And just give it a little pry and it'll come up. Now this will only go back on one way. As you can see, this hole right here is what feeds the fuel in, down into the pump. And yeah, anyway, it's the gasket that called a pulsator gasket. We got to remove these valves. Don't skip this step. A lot of people do it. Just take a punch that's straight, 1/8 inch punch right in the center. Just some light taps. It'll knock it out. It'll knock the valve out. Throw these away. Do not save them. You're not going to use any of that. Another piece ready for the bead blaster. Now we got to take this apart. Get the gasket out of the way so that you can see. Ooh, almost cut myself. Remove this spring. It's the arm return spring. You got to make sure down inside of here, on that pin that goes across, sometimes there's a little clip you got to pull out, but this time it doesn't have it. Now we got to get this aluminum plug out. Just get a small chisel right underneath. Tap on both sides. Just keep going back and forth. You'll end up eventually get that out. Once it gets to a certain point, you can just put a screwdriver under it and lift it out. And that's the plug that holds the arm in, the pin. Grab a pair of needle nose pliers, grab the arm, grab the pin, take some of the pressure off, and slide the pin up. Okay, this isn't one of those. When these pumps are new, this pin is pressed into the casting, so we got to drive it out. It's something small, fit down inside of there, and a lot of hammering. I've done enough of these to know that to be able to get a specially made driver. And knock that pin right out. A specially made driver, I think, started life as a Allen wrench and broke. Push down, slide the pin out, slide the arm out. Now I'm calling the arm a pin. It's the fork, and it actually goes right in there. Diaphragm assembly, pretty strong spring. There's one more plug to remove, right here. That leads up to this grease-filled cup here. Again, using your chisel. Comes out pretty easy. It's only a little short plug. Okay, this thing's going to take a walk through the wash tank first. Oh, let's get the valves out of the vacuum section too. Get the rest of this gasket off. I can find the punch that I want. Here's your two valves. Ready for the trash bin. I think this one has to be washed too. Okay, we're going to clean it up. We're going to bead blast it. Oh, just one more piece. The vacuum O-ring. God, what a mess this thing is. The nut, the lock washer, and a flat washer. There's your O-ring. Now this has to go on a certain way. A flat washer on the top. Okay, well you don't have to watch me do this, so let's go get it all cleaned up and ready for reassembly. Time for some reassembly. I wanted to show you how to assemble our valves. Take the rivet, put it in the spring, obviously with the small side down, and set the valve on top of it. Make sure there's no casting or anything sitting on this. You're right in this area. Make sure it's nice and clean. Line up the rivet with the hole. And if it doesn't stand up like that, get a flat punch, line it up, and tap it in a few times. Now you want it to come through the other side, about a 1/16 of an inch. If it goes in real easy, which some of them do, the hole has been opened up. A lot of the newer pumps will do that. They'll this hole will be a lot bigger. What I do is I just get a regular hex nut, set it down, and put that right directly over it so that it keeps it from going through, and then get a screwdriver or something. I have a punch that I rounded out the end of it. Put it right in the center, just give it one tap and it'll spread that out. It'll keep it from pulling back through. Just a little tip for somebody running into that particular problem. Put both valves in. Sometimes it'll stand up by itself. It just kind of gets caught. This isn't one of those times. That's all you want it to come through. You want to block up this area. And also, if you had made index marks, yeah, doesn't look like I did it, but I know how it goes back together. I know I talked about it. Put these two screws in. Just run the first one down till it just starts to touch. And then take the second one. and crank it down. And we're going to put on. Okay, once this gasket is on, we got the filter, the spring, and the can, and the bail. This can be a little tricky, but I'll show you how I do it. It works. Now, this being the inlet, you should be able to blow air in, but not suck air back out. The outlet should be able to suck air out and not blow it back in. That'll tell you that the valves are sealed, and you got a good seal around here, and you got a good seal around the can. That piece is ready to go back on. Let's do that vacuum diaphragm. Make sure to leave this big washer down there. Put on the plate with this step in it. The flat plate. Put the nut on. Just run it down, just so that it touches. Take your rubber O-ring and start it, and run it around. Snug it down a little more. Set that aside. Time for the vacuum housing. In the kit, you'll get 4 valves like this. They don't look anything like what you took out, but that's okay. You got a shallow hole and a deep hole. You wouldn't want to put it in this way because it'll interfere with this plate. So this is going to go down. Get something, some kind of tool that'll fit around that, and just tap it down. Once it's flush, it's in. The other one, rivet up. Usually hitting it 5 times will seat it. This piece is ready. The other 2 valves are going to go in here. This one's going to go down. Usually 2 or 3 hits will get that seated. It goes in kind of hard. The other side, the back half of it. Just get it seated in there. Time for the diaphragm and the arm. Now, our diaphragms look a little different than what you took out, but it still does the same thing. instead of sealing down inside in this casting, we're going to seal on this here. And once that spring gets out of the way, you'll see where the arm is going to go. Push it down, collapsing the spring, and sending the top of the pull rod down inside. I don't know if I can get a view of it in here. While that's down there, stuff the arm in it. Now remember how hard that other pin was to get out? Well, the new pin, much easier. Just keep moving that thing around and it'll go in. Push it down. You'll know it's in far enough, as you can see. See the line in there? When that's roughly in the middle, it's in far enough. Then the soft plug. And the spring. You're almost done. Move this around so that you can see the screw holes through the diaphragm, and we're ready for the fuel section. Okay, take your fuel casting. As luck would have it, one of the times this pump was rebuilt, see the two lines right here? There's also two lines on this. So you line up your reference marks to know how it went back together. Get two screws. Put one on opposite sides. Just run the screw down maybe halfway. Same thing with the other side. Now a lot of these Carter pumps, the fuel diaphragm is a little bit bigger. It's not that it's made wrong or you have the wrong diaphragm. That's exactly the way that Carter intended it. It has to do with the amount of throw that the arm gives on the diaphragm. It's a little bit more, it moves a little further than like an AC one. And if you were to take your original diaphragm and look at it closer, you'd see that it had a bump where the plates are up a little higher and it's actually scrinched in. Okay, once these screws are in halfway down, get something, adjustable wrench, put it on the arm for leverage, because you ain't going to hold that. Pull that arm up, and it'll pull the diaphragm down until it stops. Now tighten up the screws, tighten up at least 4 of them. what you're doing by pulling that up like that is you're preloading the diaphragm. If you don't, the diaphragm won't last as long. It stretches, elongates the screw holes, tears the diaphragm. It just makes it weaker. Put that in there now. Work the arm. Put your finger over the inlet while you're pulling up on the arm. I can't do this without being in the way. And you'll feel it. Pull the arm up and release it, and you'll feel pressure on the outlet. Flip it over. We're ready for the vacuum side. This is another important part. I like to get white grease and put it around that center hole and around where that O-ring is going to ride. Just a real thin layer of it on there. And also run some on this O-ring. You can do it with motor oil. I used to do it with motor oil, and for some reason I decided not to do it that way anymore. I think it was I was starting to get some comebacks. Make sure this is just like finger tight, and start pushing it down. Sometimes running around the outside of this will help convince it that that's where it wants to go. Run it all the way down. Push the arm a little bit so that the arm touches the bottom of that pull rod. And snug this down. You don't want to crank it too tight. You just want to make it so that it doesn't rock. Put the gasket on. Gasket will only go one way. This only goes one way. The spring. Get two of the screws. And you got to compress the spring down. Just go about halfway down. Hang on to that casting. You're almost done. One last thing to do. We have one more plug. That's it. We've come to the end. Don't worry about this hole. Nothing's going to come out of it. Well, I hope I didn't bore you. I hope it helped. If you got any questions, post them in the comment section below. If you'd like to order a kit for yours, don't forget you need that number stamped on the mounting flange. The application always helps too, just to verify that it is what it is. You can find us on the web at then-now.com. Give us a call, 781-335-8860. Thanks for watching. Feel free to share the video with somebody who's trying to do one of these things. Or if you belong to one of the AMC forums, post a link to it. Hit subscribe. Don't forget the little bell. That way you'll know if I post any other videos or when I do. And that's all she wrote. Thanks again.